you struggling with the complexity and billing for your ABA services? Or maybe you're just starting and you're wanting to avoid some common pitfalls. In this video, I am going to break down for you everything that you need to know about billing for your ABA therapy practice. So be sure to watch this video in its entirety because I know that you want to make sure you get paid for the services that you render. Because again, who is in the business of providing free services? Not me. Billing for ABA services can be pretty unique and sometimes even a little bit more complex than other medical services. This is due to the nature of the therapy, the individualized treatment, as well as how the codes are utilized for this type of service line. Therefore, it is so critical to understand how claims and billing work so that you can be successful when it is time for you to submit your claims to the insurance company. So first, we will start with discussing CPT codes. And CPT codes are codes that are used to define what type of service is being rendered. So in this case, what type of ABA therapy are you rendering at the time? So for example, one common code is 97151, which is for the identification assessment, and another code is 97153, which is utilized for adaptive behavior treatment by protocol. So in simple terms, 97151 would be a code that would be utilized for an initial assessment when you're first getting to learn more about the client, assessing the client, doing parent interviews, things of that nature. And 97153 is a code that is utilized for the direct therapy that the child or the individual would be receiving. So when we're thinking about ABA services and how billing works, traditionally ABA services are billed in units. So that would be 15-minute units. So say for example, you are servicing an individual for 1 hour. You would then break that 1 hour into 4 because there are 4 15-minute units in 1 hour. This is why it is important to be accurate in your record recording and time recording so that you can ensure when you are submitting to the insurance company that you are able to receive proper reimbursement for the services that you rendered. So let's give an example with 97153 code and the breakdown with the units. So say for example, a therapist provides 2 hours of 97153 for a client. That would then be 8 units of 97153 because remember I mentioned that each hour would be equivalent to 4 units. So again, it is important to be precise because if you are not precise and accurate with your recording, this could potentially lead to denials of your claims, and we do not want that because if it is that you are rendering a service, you should be compensated as such. And also if it is that you are rendering a service and you're perhaps having staff render the service, you want to make sure that you receive the funds so that you can properly compensate your staff for the services that they are also providing. Next, you want to develop a thorough documentation process. And if you have been in the mental health field for some time, you know that you have to document your sessions, and if you didn't document it, then it did not happen. So when we're thinking about session documentation from a billing perspective, this documentation is literally the backbone to successful billing, because what can happen is there may be times where we might get a request for an audit, and if we are in the auditing process, there will be a request for that documentation. So you want to make sure that you are able to justify with the documentation or your session note that you have actually rendered the service that you are billing for. So if you may be newer to this space, I will say what session notes are. These are documents that are completed after you render a service to a client, and traditionally what this document entails is the interventions that were utilized when you were working with that client, the goals that were targeted, what you did during the session, how the client responded. Any challenges as well would be documented in your session note. So pretty much it would be a dictation, for lack of a better word, of what it is that went on during your session. Another form of documentation as well that happens during the insurance or billing process is a treatment plan. A treatment plan is so crucial because it helps to guide the treatment that you will be doing with the client. So as it relates to an insurance perspective, traditionally a treatment plan will be completed when you are requesting for an authorization for services for a client. And the treatment plan should be signed by the BCBA, should also be signed by the parent as well. And when you are requesting an authorization for services, you want to make sure that that treatment plan is buttoned up and that you are able to perhaps answer any questions that a reviewer may have about that treatment plan, should they have questions about your course of action prior to approving your authorization based upon your treatment plan. So now when we're thinking about the authorization process, many times prior to you being able to see a client, you have to ask for authorization for that specific service. So I always recommend, even if you reach out to an insurance company and they say there is no pre-authorization required, that you still take down the information of that representative that you spoke to, just because there are times where someone may tell you that there is no authorization required and then you call back and another person tells you something totally different depending upon the rep that you get that day. So make sure that you are also documenting who it is that you're speaking to when you are calling the insurance companies directly, because like we talked about earlier, if you don't document it, then it did not happen. Some insurance companies may require for you to do reassessments for reauthorization for services every certain amount of months or years, things like that. So you want to make sure that you are checking with your funder to see what their requirements are as it relates to continuous treatment for clients, as well as the authorization phase, whether it be that you need authorization prior to the start of services or if you need authorizations for services every certain amount of months. One thing in particular that makes it somewhat difficult when you are billing for insurance is if you are working with multiple funders or insurance providers, it can be pretty tricky because they may all have specific things that they want as it relates to processing their claims, as it relates to treatment plans or session notes, things of that nature. So you really want to make sure that you are reviewing your contract and that you are clear as it relates to what is expected for each insurance carrier. So for example, some insurance carriers may only want you to submit electronic claims, where other insurance carriers are open to you submitting electronic claims and also submitting claims on a CMS 1500 form, which will be a paper-based claim that you would mail in. I highly recommend, however, that if you are submitting claims to the insurance company, that you go the electronic route, because paper claims take very long to process. Think about it. You have to complete it first by hand or electronically, then you have to mail it, then it has to get to the department, then the department has to manually process the claim. So you will cut your time probably in half or more if it is that you utilize an electronic format for your claim submission. And also for utilizing an electronic format, that may also help you to decrease your errors, because many times these insurance profiles have some technology that will alert you if it is that you have put something in incorrectly. So that can also help you to minimize delays in your claims being processed. And as we're thinking about processing claims, you want to make sure that you understand what the restrictions are as it relates to submission of claims. Some insurance companies won't accept claims after 60 days, some might be 90 days. It all depends upon the funder. This is why it is so crucial for you to review your contracts and understand what are the requirements for each funder. And for me personally, there has been times where I would submit claims super late and was not able to get compensated for those claims. And it was nobody's fault but myself, because I just assumed that all funders were about 90 days or so, and I was busy with work, doing all the things, being the clinician and the admin, and was not focused on what the timeline was. So when submitting those claims, what happened? You guessed it, I did not get paid. So I I couldn't do anything about it. So it's really important that we are getting paid for the services. And if it requires for you to keep track and have your deadlines, manage yourself better than I did, I would totally suggest that, because you want to get paid for the services that you are rendering. So even say, for example, when you have a good system in place, all of the things, there can still be claims that get denied or rejected, right? So it's really important for you to stay on top of all your claim submissions, or if you have a biller, which I highly suggest that is something that you invest in for your practice, they can stay on top of your rejected claims or your denied claims. Because many of the insurance funders use automations as they're processing claims. So there might be claims that were clean claims and everything was correct on it, and the system that they use just rejected it. So you have to make sure that you are on top of it. You are reviewing the reasons as to why the claim was rejected, or your biller is reviewing the reasons as to why they were rejected or denied, and that you are getting that claim back out there if it was rejected or denied in error. So some could be lack of documentation as to why a claim was denied. It could be that an authorization was not on file as it relates to why a claim was denied, or it could be that there was some type of incorrect coding as it relates to the service code that was placed onto the claim. So you want to make sure that you are reviewing those reasons. There's sometimes other reasons as well, such as you exceeded the fee schedule or the units that were approved, things like that. But when you're looking at the reasons as to why the claim was denied or rejected, you can always go back to your records and see what you submitted and make any modifications to get that claim back out there. And the final reason as to what I gave you the example of earlier is if you missed the timely filing deadline. So if that happens and you just didn't submit your claims on time based upon the time frame that the insurance company gave you, then at that point you're out of luck, because even if you resubmit it, they're going to tell you the same thing. So if what I have been sharing so far as it relates to the breakdown of ABA billing has been helpful for you in any way, please be sure to like this video and subscribe. I also recommend that you share this to someone that's also on their journey to becoming an ABA business owner, or in the midst of being an ABA business owner and could use some of the information that I had shared in this video. As I had mentioned earlier, using electronic-based technology probably will be your best friend as it relates to this billing process. It will help to increase your efficiency as well as your accuracy. When you are dealing with claims, you want to reduce the amount of errors as much as possible, as well as the amount of time that you are chasing around for session notes and things of that nature. So that is why I always highly recommend using some sort of electronic platform that has the ability to house your session notes, as well as has the ability to house your entries so that you can submit your claims to the insurance company. Because, for example, when I was only paper-based as an organization when we first started the company, I would have to chase down my staff for their timesheets as it relates to the time frames they were with clients, have to chase them down for their session notes, and they had the documentation, so that was very helpful, but it just delayed my ability to be able to bill in a timely manner, and which would help to keep consistent cash flow in the business. So there are times where I've heard people say they have not been able to get paid or submit claims because their staff didn't keep track of their time accurately, or their staff lost the session notes, or it's been so long and they haven't seen the staff, or the staff quit and they don't have the documentation and things of that nature. So there are so many beautiful safeguards that happen when you do have that electronic format of submission of sessions, treatment plans, all the things, as well as your billing. And it helps to make your life a lot easier, or your biller's life a lot easier, when you're not having to figure out where a paper is so that you can ensure that you are accurately billing for services. I also want to say that it is super important to stay up to date on the changes that the insurance companies make. They are forever making changes, and sometimes it is not as in your face as you would hope it would be. Sometimes there are little subtle things that they'll add on their website if you just randomly go on and check one day and you're like, oh wow, this is a memo or a big change. So it's really important that you are continuously looking on the website for your insurance companies that you are paneled with. If there's a representative that you have some type of continuous dialogue with, or that is your representative for your county or your state, that you are in constant contact with that person, so that if there are any questions that you have, then you are able to have an inside source on how to get those particular questions answered. In addition, sometimes the insurance companies will put on different trainings or webinars to help providers with understanding their platforms, as well as webinars or trainings if there are large changes that are happening within that company as it relates to the insurance. Also, as a business owner, you want to make sure that you are continuously keeping your staff up to date as it relates to the changes that insurance companies are making, whether it be on the clinical side, you making updates and retraining your staff on how to complete treatment plans, how to complete session notes, and things of that nature. And on the administrative side, that you are communicating to your staff what maybe things have changed as it relates to what type of requirements are now required for an individual to be able to render the service. So say for example, if we're thinking about hiring and there is a new rollout of a certain certification or licensure that is now required in your state, then it is important for your hiring department to be aware that this is now a requirement. So if there's anyone that's coming or interested in a role with us and they do not meet that criteria, then we will not be able to move forward. This video is a part of a series that I have kickstarted as it relates to starting an ABA business or sustaining and growing your ABA business. So if this video was of any value to you, please make sure that you are tuning in weekly to learn more about managing and growing your ABA practice.